I like to call this MSLSD. I mean, you gotta be on drugs in order to watch this, unironically. I generally do not know who the target audience is. Like listen just a little bit of this. And tell me if you can actually listen to it if you're on a clear mind.
The election means one of two things, if this is the way he's going to approach it. Either he loses the election and he goes to prison.
How can you even say this? Like, do you know the future? I mean, how, especially when it's Trump, like, how many times has he been investigated and they couldn't find him guilty? Why exactly would you assume that this time, if they investigate him, he will go to prison? And you say this with such certainty, as there is no other option. Like, you already spoke with the jury, and you know what the jury is going to say. But okay, let's assume that this is the case, right? So apparently, according to this lady, which by the way, she was sued for slander because she said some right-wing publication is literal Russian disinformation. So they sued her. Now, what's interesting is that one of the defenses she brought in court was that, well, she's not really a journalist and people watch her for entertainment and not for the news. That was interesting. She didn't lose her job because of this, apparently. But the second thing is that the judge said, well, yeah, but like when she said literal Russian disinformation, she didn't mean literal, she meant figuratively. So that's why she got off the hook. But anyway, right, so let's assume that this is the hypothesis. I don't know who keeps messaging me. God damn it, like up until now, I didn't get any single message. Now my phone keeps vibrating. And because I use my phone as a camera. But anyway, right, so this lady is saying that if Trump loses the election, he goes to prison. Let's assume that this is the case.
Or he wins the election, he doesn't go to prison, and is that for life?
I am a Romanian, and I know a little bit about the American political system. I believe, I might be wrong, you know, I mean, she is from MSLSD, so authoritative source, according to YouTube, by the way. But I believe that if you win an election in the United States, it's 4 years. Yeah, you get to be president for 4. It's not for life, unless of course he passes away. You know, like during those 4 years, I mean, he is of a particular age. Something happens to him, natural causes, and then the vice president becomes president. Am I understanding the American political system correctly? Why can't this lady from MSLSD understand it? Why is she spreading such harmful and dangerous misinformation? How is this not like blatant conspiracy theories? If a right-winger did this, they would be laughed off the internet. Like, no right-winger says garbage like this. I think, like, even on the most fringe publications on the right, you don't get hot takes like this. Like, it's beyond bizarre what she is saying, right? So, like, if Trump wins the election, she believes fascismus. Besides the fact that you have a constitution in the United States, people have guns. This is why the United States never had communism or fascism or any other sort of dictatorship. It's because you have an armed fucking militia. It's literally in your constitution. But anyway, right, so according to her, if Trump wins, it's for life.
That he gets to be president? Will we keep having more elections?
I love the we. Like as if she's represented to speak in our behalf.
Or no?
Yeah, you do get to have more elections. I genuinely like do not understand why you would think that you wouldn't. Not to mention, like, literally the New York Times, and I say literally, not literally as figuratively as she said it. The New York Times published an article that in order to save democracy, we need to stop having elections. They realized that the title was so fucking awful that they had to change it. But it's the left that is suggesting this. It's not the right.
Every election is a new opportunity for him to go to prison? Do you think he allows us to have new elections?
Okay, let's assume that just so you can understand how dumb her takes are. Like they're so dumb, they're for mainstream media, right? Like, let's assume that Donald Trump literally is afraid of going to prison, so he needs to win elections in order to not go to prison, right? Did it occur to you that he can issue a presidential pardon for himself at that point? Like, he wouldn't have to become the dictator of the United States so that he can be president in perpetuity and not go to prison. And not to mention, if I'm not mistaken, I think like even US presidents can like theoretically be sent to prison. Like if you're Joe Biden and you run someone over with a car and it's in the public and everyone sees it, yeah, I think there is a process through which he can lose his presidency and go to prison for that. I mean, it never happened in the history of the US, but like assuming it would, right? Like, just because someone is president doesn't make him above the fucking law. I know that left-leaning people have difficulty and they're struggling understanding the American Constitution and the political system. But like, it's not like that. It's not so easy to like say, oh, well, if we vote for a right, we got fascismus. I find this so fucking bizarre. Like how disingenuous she is, number one. But I don't blame her. I mean, she's just an actor, right? Like, all she's doing is acting, and all of these shows, you know that they're acting, because, like, the moment the writers go on strike, the shows get suspended. Like, these people aren't talking from the heart. They're reading from a prompter. So, anyway, it's not her that's the problem. It's the audience. Like, just imagine the type of individual that's listening to all this, and they're bobbing their head, like, yeah. It's... Like, it goes against any type of common sense. I think, like, even an 8th grade student probably has more knowledge in civics to debunk what she is saying than anyone else. Like, why is an 8th grade student smarter than she is?
I mean, if those are the stakes, if winning the election is...
And I love, like, how Weasley, if those are... But they're not the stakes, right? Like, you presented a false premise. It's like me saying, well, if pigs fly, then blah, 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 and when you go out, you need to look up, right? Like, if that's the stake, and but like, sure, but pigs don't fly.
Is his plan to stay out of prison? What happens in that election if and when he does not win it?
He goes to prison then. What fucking questions are these? Oh my god, like, this is hilarious. You know, like, I'm starting to understand why MSLSD has an audience. It's probably people who get drunk and then watch MSLSD for the lulz. Like, with these things, if I had like 3 or 4 people on a Discord, it would be a fun evening. We make some popcorn, we watch, we drink some beer. It's good entertainment.
Does that kind of an election end with a graceful concession to a fair and square re-elected President Biden?
I genuinely, like, do not understand this obsession with, like, the concession. Like, the concession. Trump didn't concede that Joe Biden is president. Like, you don't really have to do it, like it's a formality, but they can physically escort him out of the fucking White House if needed. Like, it just doesn't work that way. It's not like, you know, out of the kindness of the heart, they allow the other guy. No, like, the people are in power. The people have fucking guns, number one. Number two, even if someone, like, let's say, would be a president, it has happened throughout the American history. But if someone, like, let's say, just doesn't want to concede, that's fine, you know? Like, at the end of the day, they can escort him out. It's kind of like, if the bank kicks you out of your house for not paying your mortgage, like, it's expected that you're going to leave willingly. But if you don't, it's fine. Like, the police comes up and they escort you out by force. The same thing can happen to a president.
Did President Biden?
Why is she asking this question to the audience? Why isn't she answering them? Like, doesn't she have a team that explains to her how these things work?
I mean, if Trump and his supporters see the stakes as losing and going to prison or winning and being president, and probably president for...
The Democrat supporters view the stakes as if a single win from a Republican means fascismus. Not to mention, like, wasn't there, like, a Democrat supporter that actually shot a MAGA guy for no reason? Like, none whatsoever. He just wore the MAGA hat. Executed him on the street. I don't know which supporters are more dangerous, to be honest.
For life. How should we expect that he and the Republican Party and Republican officials in swing states are going to handle the conduct of that election?
I mean, I don't know. I'm a little bit more worried about what the left does. I mean, the only election in American history that you couldn't contradict was the previous one. Like, up until then, Bush had this election contradicted by the left. Hillary contradicted the election of Trump. But all of a sudden, when the shoe is on the other foot, right? Like, how can we trust that seeing how hypocritical the Democrats are, how can we trust that any time in the future they're going to follow the rules? I mean, that's actually a valid question, because I can actually talk about things that happened before.
That Trump may very well lose. And because we are prone to forget, we have to say out loud, I mean, that we would be remiss, we would be willfully naive to ask that question as if our politics exists in a vacuum.
What the fuck is she talking about? It's 2023. Politics is everywhere. You can't read a comic book without getting politics. You can't play a video game without getting politics. It's every fucking... I'm from Romania. I am bombarded with the fact that, oh, the Trump, the Mar-a-Lago... most Romanians don't even know what a Mar-a-Lago is. It's like, it's everywhere. What are you talking about? Like, politics is in a vacuum.
Somewhere outside the rest of our news. As if the politics pages are totally different than the crime pages, right?
If you talked about crime, even half the amount you talk about this shit, maybe crime would be at a lower level. Just saying.
As if we are not in a moment where far-right politics is coincident with far-right violence. With regular shows of force from paramilitary extreme right groups.
Paramilitary extreme right group. Name one. Name one. You don't even have a boogeyman anymore. You dealt with the Anons. Completely wiped them off the internet, by the way. You dealt with, what else did they have? The Proud Boys and, I don't know, like what other groups they had. You dealt with all of them. Which one is the problem now? Far-right paramilitary group. You know where the violence is, from what I see on the internet? From random individuals committing crime. Breaking into people's homes, breaking into people's cars, breaking into shops. That's, you know, it's not even like far left or far right anymore. It's just like you allowed crime to happen. Like, because I guess like it fucks with the middle class and the lower class. I don't think like this lady has to deal with that shit. You know, I don't think she's afraid that people are going to break into her car. She doesn't have to do with that, right? Because it affects the lesser people. Well, what I loved about the most during the American protests that were mostly peaceful was that when the mob was rampaging stores and they were going and destroying people's businesses, there were no cops. But when they got into the CNN headquarters, all of a sudden there were cops. I find that to be incredibly fascinating. So, like, if it's the poor people and the middle class, so they get to have to deal with crime. And probably have to give away their guns as well. But when you're now going after the ecclesiarchy, you're going after the reporters, and you're going after the rich, all of a sudden there is police protection, and they do have guns and shit. Also, by the way, very interesting, if you guys remember, never forget, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. And there was like another, the Summer of Love, I think, in Seattle, right? These things were allowed to exist and to terrorize the local population for days on end. With alleged rapes and murders happening, a lot of it was Summer of Love, they call it. All of it was allowed to happen until they went to the mayor Ted Wheeler's house and the mayor of the other place. Because I forgot where the other one, I think it was either in Portland or Seattle, I forgot. But the moment they went to the mayor's house, literally the next day the thing was solved. Like, the Capitol Hill Autonomous, that's it, cleaned up. And, you know, it goes to show the current status in America. It's not left-wing or right-wing. It's rich versus poor. Privileged versus unprivileged. And you get to see this on television. Like, who is the target audience for this? Like, who is listening to this and nodding their heads? It's like, oh yeah, well, if the Republicans win, then that's it. Like, we will never have elections again. Who says that? Where do you pull that out? How can you even, like, the writer for this show, can you imagine? Like, writing something? I wouldn't be able to. Like, I don't have enough shit in me. I'm not that full of shit in order to write something like that. Let me know what you guys think, though. And as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.